Welcome to the Starfish Diaries. I am your host, Liz McKean, and you might have found me from another podcast or from yoga or through coaching or maybe a recovery event, but all that matters is that you're here now, and I am so glad that you're here. On this show, we're going to be talking about identity and self-trust and recovering from all sorts of things, including shame and burnout and squeezing ourselves into what we think good looks like. And I'm going to use a lot of metaphors because that's how I make sense of the world. And I'm hoping that helps you too. I'm really just here to remind you and honestly remind us that there is no such thing as doing life wrong and that you do get to make your life into a place that you want to be. And we're going to figure it out together. So let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am just so glad to be here with you once again. I'm excited about this episode today. This is a topic I've been kind of turning over in my mind about how I want to approach it here on this podcast. But before we jump into it, as intended, when I remember, we're going to do some breathing. So we're just going to take one really big deep breath to start this episode. So maybe just take a couple regular breaths, just maybe become aware that you're breathing. Okay. And then exhale all of the air out of your body. Let every little bit of it go. Good job. And then inhale through your nose as deep as you can. Fill your rib cage. Hold at the top for just a moment, and then open your mouth, slowest exhale that you can find. And feel your shoulders drop away from your ears. Feel that space between your eyebrows unfurrow, come back to your normal breath. And as always, if it felt good to take that deep breath, it would probably feel good to take a few more. So take as many as you need. Pause. I mean, if you forget about this episode altogether and go and take a bunch of deep breaths, and that's amazing. That's clearly what you needed, and we all need some breathing up in her. So anyways, the thing that we're going to talk about today that I am sort of deciding in the moment is going to be a multi-episode situation. This is probably just going to be a little bit of a briefer recording, is recovery. And I feel like if you found me here from having known me or my work elsewhere, then this is probably something that you've heard me talk about before. I've recorded the Rise, Recover, Live podcast with the Phoenix and more recently with New Form, both really incredible organizations, nonprofit organizations that support people in all sorts of recovery. I've done that for the last 2 years, and there is going to be an updated sort of version of that coming out soon where recovery is going to be a big topic. And I'm just like eternally grateful to be a person who gets to be on a mic talking about recovery, not only because I love it and it's important to me and it feels like it matters, but also because when I was struggling for many, many years and just didn't think there was a way out and didn't think I was going to be able to survive the next 10 minutes, much less 24 hours, I listened to podcasts. I listened to recovery podcasts, and it was like oxygen. It was like the words of people who had been there, who had been through what I was going through and had found their way to, the next chapter, the other side of it, if that's even, I don't know if that's even how I feel about it anymore, but it was, it was like just enough to keep me going. And this is not a podcast that is dedicated to recovery in that way. I am excited to sort of be lots of even more parts of myself or explore more parts of myself in this podcast, because my hope is that it will encourage you or maybe invite you to explore that within yourself. But it's a really big part of who I am. And it's the thing that I've spoken about on a mic for so long that it feels important to talk about it here. So just in case you haven't heard me talk about recovery endlessly on other shows, I I will just briefly talk about my own story. So I, and if you want to hear more of this, honestly, I think you can just probably Google my name, and a lot of different shows will come up, both that I was a host and a guest on. And if you have questions, just seek me out and find me. You can always find me on Instagram and send me a DM. Always happy to talk about more of this story. But for this purposes of this podcast, I will keep it relatively brief. I was the good kid. I was the good kid. I knew how to be good. It's like I read the instruction manual and I was like, got it. Message received. And no matter what it did to me, I was like, I will get the good grades. I will earn all the gold stars. I will be the athlete. I will be the honored student. I will, make everyone so proud. And I had such overwhelmingly horrific anxiety throughout that all that, it was like, I was born in 1980. So it was years and years it was before social media even was a thing, and way before discussion around mental health was a thing, way before discussion about any kind of recovery or, God forbid, addiction was a thing. That was just fully reserved for the people that were living on the street and drinking out of paper bags. And now, knowing and loving many people who have had that experience, I certainly know that is part of the story, but it wasn't a story I could ever claim for myself. And I was good, like quote unquote good. And my anxiety was such that I never slept. I had panic attacks before I knew what that meant. And it wasn't until, I think my 20s when my panic attacks got to the point that I started going to the hospital because I was absolutely certain I was dying, that I finally had language for it. And then that was this, something I held a lot of shame around. But I remember very vividly, like in my body, I can remember the first time I drank. And it was in college. That's how long I waited. I mean, good girl present. And I remember I looked around and I was like, is this how people feel? Is this how normal people feel all the time? Like they just feel okay? Like it was like this absolute rock, this clench that happened in my chest all the time that I couldn't even ever take a deep breath. I was just sure at every moment that something terrible was about to happen. And usually the terrible thing did happen, but nobody else knew about it. It was just happening within my own body, and suddenly that went away. Like that dissolved. I felt better. I felt okay. I felt normal. Like I think that's a really important thing to say, because I feel like, people who I know who were able to drink safely, people who I know who don't even enjoy alcohol. And actually, I've had this experience with other substances. When I take it, it's like, oh, I feel weird. I don't like how I feel. I don't feel like myself. Like that is one thing. This is very different. And this is something that I know that I have in common with other people who have experienced substance use disorder. And that's that feeling of like, this is what normal feels like. This is what I'm supposed to feel like. Everything else is intolerable. And now I know there is another version, and of course, because I was a smart person, I was like, I don't ever want to not feel this way. And pretty immediately, it was my goal to feel that way as much as possible, which is not a super healthy path to go down. And I'm also, again, I'm smart. And most people that I know have had this experience are also incredibly smart. And we know how to get a hold of the thing that we need to get a hold of for a very long time. We know how to hide it. We know how to manipulate if we need to. And eventually, the thing that it was fixing, like the solution it was for my anxiety, which honestly, I don't know how I would have survived without it back then. Like it did. There's a truth in saying that for a while, it really was a solution to my anxiety. And then it became its own problem. And then it made the anxiety much worse. And then it made my life much worse. And then nothing mattered but getting hold of alcohol. And there was definitely times that it was like, I actually, at this point, don't care what I get a hold of, but I can't feel the way I'm feeling when I'm sober. And that is a very scary place to find yourself in. At that moment, the kind of hijacking of my brain was almost a blessing to have that sole focus of just like, get a hold of this thing to feel better, because it would almost block me from realizing the horror of the fact that was all that mattered. And, there's a lot more to that story that I've talked about more on other podcasts, but, there was times of sobriety. There were times that I was able to set it down. I got help in a lot of different ways. I have a family and a husband and friends who would show up for me in ways that were very unwelcome at the time. But looking back, I'm just so grateful that I was so surrounded by love. Although I definitely was not feeling grateful about it at the time. It felt like someone was putting me in a cage. And I won't go into the whole recovery story, but long story very short, I didn't want to be sober. I knew I had to be. And it wasn't until I found yoga after many starts and stops, many amounts of time, like good amount of time that I would have not drank, and then I would start again. It wasn't until I found yoga that I started having little glimmers of like, oh shit, I think I actually feel better when I'm sober. And that was on the yoga mat. That was moments that I like felt good in my body. I felt safe inside of my own head during Shavasana, that last part of yoga. And that was not even revolutionary. What's the word? It was just so wildly unfamiliar to me. The only time I'd ever felt safe inside of myself was when I had numbed the inside of myself. And so to be fully present and have that feeling was just mind-blowing. And it was like those were the moments that made me want it more. And it was around that time or shortly after that time that I came across the Phoenix, which is an incredible organization that I'll link in the show notes that really creates opportunities to do fun things. Long ago, it was only physical activities. So it used to be like rock climbing and CrossFit and hiking and yoga, etc. Now there's more options such as music festivals and art and poetry and all these really wonderful things. The idea is that community is the thing, that connection is the thing that supports recovery as opposed to any particular activity. But that was such a wonderful community for me because I had tried treatment. I had tried 12-step AA, and those proved to be unhelpful for me and in a lot of ways very harmful for me. And it doesn't mean it's that way for everyone. That was your path, and I celebrate that with you. But for me, there was a lot of harm in the message that I had to let go of ego, that I had to accept all my flaws, that I had to essentially be on a lifelong apology tour for just being this terrible. I was like, oh, this is all familiar. I learned this in Catholic, Bible school or whatever. And it didn't work for me then. It doesn't work for me now because I was already convinced. I was like, I believe you that I'm a terrible person. I believe you that I shouldn't actually listen to anything happening in my own head. But not trusting myself was the thing that continued to ruin my life. I needed to find a way back to myself and not farther from myself. And that was what I was able to find doing yoga. That's what I was able to find being around people in a recovery community that were accepting of other not necessarily traditional ways. And I am, again, giving such a high level description of this, but that's been really where I've landed for the past many years. I don't count days, so I'm not a person who's going to tell you like my sobriety date or anything like that, but I have been part of that brand, I guess, of recovery mindset for a long time, which is that all pathways fit, that whether you are, whether 12-step was your thing, or if you are someone who is part of another type of meetings organization, Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, all incredible. If you're someone who likes to do yoga, then that makes you feel better and allows you to find your version of recovery. If you are someone who moderate your use of whatever the heck it is that you're using, and that is what has kept you safe. If you found another thing, like another medication or substance that you use in a way that keeps you safe from the thing that felt unsafe to you, like whatever, harm reduction is that's the thing I want to really celebrate more and more, because there's so much stigma against it. But all of that to say, in my opinion, which you can take what you like and leave the rest, it all fits and it all is valid. And there's just no, right and wrong when it comes to any of this stuff, whether it's recovery or addiction or, just life. And that is very scary and that is very freeing, both of those things at the same time. I've used this metaphor before, but it just makes me think of that moment when you're a little kid and you go to a friend's house and, you're just having a great time and opening up the potato chips and cracking open your, third Coca-Cola, and all of a sudden you look around and you're like, wait, are there no grown-ups here? And it's like that exhilaration and terror all at the same time of like, there's no grown-ups here. And I gotta tell you, I have that feeling in my stomach more days than not as a 44-year-old person now. Like, I'll look around and be like, oh my God, there's no grown-ups here. And again, that's exhilarating and freeing and also really scary. And I think the way to make it less scary is to find the grown-up, I guess, for lack of a better word, within yourself. It's to find the safety inside, which is wild to be able to say right now, because for so long, the most dangerous thing was inside. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of us, especially in this world that we are just taught forever that inside is like, don't listen to that. Don't listen to, if you're hungry, like that's bad. If you're craving something, that's bad. If you're tired and you want to go to sleep instead of getting up and doing, all the productive things, that's bad. And I deeply disagree. I think that creating a relationship with the inside of you is the only way. It's the only way, because there's no grown-ups. So, you gotta have you. And that allows us to have each other, but like, you gotta have you. And I think that takes time, and that takes a level of bravery that for those of us who did go through addiction, substance use disorder, whatever the heck you want to call it. I have quarrels with some of the words, and also I just use them kind of interchangeably. We were forced to create those relationships with ourselves. I look back at the anxiety. I look back at the panic attacks. I look back at the kind of drinking that I did, that there is no way to frame it that is not very scary and very dangerous and very self-destructive. And I'm so damn grateful, because I could have gone my whole life muting me, I could have gone my whole life being good on the outside and just shoving down everything happening on the inside, because it felt scary, it felt bad, it felt in conflict with what was on the outside. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I found something that worked, I found alcohol that made me feel better, and then that thing ruined my life again and again, and would have 100% killed me, I wouldn't have been forced to really just strip it all down and say, oh my God, I need help. And I certainly wouldn't have been the person that I am right now that's on a microphone telling you the thing that everything in me for years and years said that don't tell, like keep that inside, keep that, like shut up. But it happened and I'm here and I get to be a person who's honest with therapists, and that sure wasn't the case. I get to be a person who has a decision in front of me and looks inward instead of outward to make that decision. And then I also get to be a person who takes other people's hands and says like, hey, look in this mirror, like see what I see. This really strong person that maybe you've never been able to fully appreciate or see, or maybe you've never really talked to because it's felt really scary. So like, let's do it together. I'll hold your hand until you don't even need my hand anymore because you got you. So I think I'm going to stop there for this first kind of dipping of the toe into the recovery conversation. It makes sense to kind of share my own story and perspective first, but I want to talk more about what comes next. That's really what spurred this podcast to begin with. Is I love that I've been able to talk so much about recovery, and I love that it's been such a big part of my life. And there's a moment that comes, certainly for me and for others that I've talked to and worked with, that feels like, wait, is that all I am? Like, is this it? Like I got here. And so now, like, am I even allowed to want more than this? And the answer is yes. And that's a thing that we're going to talk about in the next episode. So for now, as always, I'm so grateful that you joined me today. I'm excited to talk more about this with you. And if you are not a person who relates to or has experienced, again, specifically substance use disorder, if you have a very healthy relationship with substances, with alcohol, etc., I mean, that doesn't mean that this isn't for you. Please stick around, because I really think these tools and these conversations are applicable to all of us. And if you have gone through that, or you are going through that, if you want some resources, if you want some tools, please also feel free to reach out. You can find me on Instagram. I'll tag it in the show notes, and there'll be more ways to connect with me once I have all that stuff done. So for now, exhale all of your breath. Let it all go. Empty out. Feel your belly button tuck in towards your spine, and then in through your nose, take a big breath in. Hold it at the top, and then slowly exhale. Yeah, when you're ready, take one more big breath in through your nose. Hold. Exhale. Shoulders drop, jaw unclenches. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Starfish Diaries. I want to take a quick moment to thank some of the people who have made this possible. The artwork that I am so in love with is by my friend and the most talented artist, Mo Houston, and you can find her and her work and work with her by going to Joy Scout Studios. I will have that linked in the show notes. And thank you to my incredible editor, Sean Gritters. If you are looking for production support with your podcast, highly recommend that you check him out. His information will also be in the description.